Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is going to be a fun global gatherings today. It's always fun, but I'm hoping that this is a little different. We're going to kind of set this whole program up a little bit differently today, uh, because we don't want to miss anything that you have to say and bring to the group. We're going to ask that everybody find their chat button down below and click it open if you need it. And if you have a question as we are moving forward with our conversation, type it in there. So others can see that question and they hear that it's already been repeated, or they know that they can ask a different one. I'm not going to worry about hands up yet. We might do that at the very end for raising hand, but type your question, just put question and then your question. So, and Dan's going to be kind of scrolling over that through this. As well as the other thing is, if you have a story to share, put in the chat the word story. Because no two stories with ghosts and phantoms and shrieks and waywards and wanderers and whatever else of the 500 words choice from a thesaurus that we give it, none of them are the same. They have values that are the same, but none of them are the same. So we'd like you to just put story into the chat. And then we know we can ask, and Dan will say, okay, he'll just see the lineup. And this way you don't have to worry about holding a hand up or taking too much time waiting and trying to remember what was my question, or my story. All right. And with that, welcome. Jeanne and I and Dan are the team from the Cosmic Voices Network, and we're here to bring you information, hopefully clarify what you may feel is a ghost, a phantom, a specter, and what earthbound spirits are and why they're here. Some of them we certainly can't elaborate on all, but why a good majority of them are still here. And with that, it's learning to understand, is this an earthbound spirit, or is it a spirit who's already crossed over, and have they just come to visit and sit by our bed and tickle our toes or something? So with that, I'm going to lead off and send it off to Jeannie, because she's going to share a little bit. And then we're going to go into our stories. My story, Wendy's got a good story I want to hear. Dan has a good story, and Jeanne. And we're just going to build on these stories as we go through answering questions. All right,
Well,
Jeannie.
good day to you, whatever part of the day it might be for you. So hopefully we can be in our bodies and join in. I think we need to do the shield, though, for those of you that have been following along, especially now since we're going to be telling our stories and opening those corridors and those places where things go bump in the night, which is something I was really excited about when I was 20. But now in my 70s, I really don't care about the bumps in the night because it's like, oh, yeah, whatever. But for those of you who are familiar, let's just take a few moments to set our intention by sitting quietly, taking some deep breaths. And we've had schematics before, but we don't need them today necessarily. But we imagine ourselves in a small individual four-sided pyramid, each one of us. And we have boundary lines at the base of the pyramid, one that's just literally connected to the pyramid floor, and then one that's about a foot and a half out. And those are intentional boundary lines, which then go all the way to the top of the four-sided pyramid. And we relax in that because it's all about clarity, uh, protection, keeping out the negativity, and just allowing the light and the goodness to just flow through us today. And we take some slow, deep breaths to that point, and we really are enjoying the fact that we are together and we are going to be able to connect and to share and to learn more things. And we let go of any worries or concerns or fears or just general things that might be bugging us today. any kind of fatigue of the changes in time or anything that might interfere with us feeling relaxed and able to move forward in this wonderful gathering. And just take a few slow, deep breaths. We see all that leaving, and we just feel the goodness coming in through us. And then we go into the bigger shield, which is there's a graphic for that as well, but it's a much larger four-sided pyramid, which we all go into. And as we go into this larger four-sided pyramid, we go through the angelic node presence. We have the White Brotherhood Protection Committee there. And we have what we call these EBWs, these energy bands that swirl around us. And they go from ceiling to floor to ceiling. And the first one that is closest to us, that EBW, spins clockwise. The second one spins counterclockwise. The third spins clockwise. And the fourth, which I'm adding today for extra protection, spins counterclockwise, and it's the color of a blue-violet, because we're going to be sharing some stuff that has energy with it that needs to be balanced. And we're just going to breathe slowly and deeply and be grateful for our protection, grateful for our centering, feeling that calmness, bringing in the joy, bringing in the moments of sharing earth experiences, and knowing that we are very much protected and guided, and we'll have a very clean and lovely experience today. It also is a wonderful protection for the spirits that are coming with us today to share in the day and to support us as we are gathering together. We are so grateful to this ability to be in that source, the I am, that God energy, that divinity today. And then we're ready to go. Ready and raring to go. Now, that protection was given to us, so probably about 10 years ago, came forth because of all of our experiences with wanderers and wayward energy and things that would go bump in the night. And although I had already been taught very well by a spiritualist minister, there were still things that I didn't know at the time, because we progress and we evolve. And so that protection was very important, considering the level that we got into unknowingly with governmental energies. So this is a good protection time for all of us, and recognizing spirit on the other side with us, going with us, which is so joyful. And they're very excited about this. So that's the prelim to us getting into stories and whatnot. When Regina and I were talking and we're trying to remember our stories, like you, we probably have so many, we really had to decide which we could, would be good enough to share, because I think every one of us on the podcast today could probably write a small book about our experiences with spirit. Some that were probably very funny, some that probably were very poignant, some of them that maybe were not that good. But the thing is that we're always having these experiences and contacts with spirit. And what I want to show you right now, to some of you that are familiar, and it's a much better band ball than it was before, Gary. And, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but one of the reasons we ask, why are they here? Why do they stay? Are they trapped? Why are they trapped? Well, for all of you, I know you know this, it's all about frequency. It's all about the energetic of frequency and sound. And because of that, we all have our own psychic signature, our own frequency that we hold in our individual space. And when a person passes over easily, usually the frequency is pretty balanced, and it happens easily that people pass, their loved ones are there. It's all very welcomed and ready for. Other times, though, if there's tragedy or sudden loss of life, it isn't necessarily that the person who has left the body has the frequency to get where they need to go, even if there are relatives or friends on the other side who are wanting them to come over. They get trapped in the energy and the frequency of the trauma of the event that just ended their lives. And so they get caught in these different frequencies, which I call these um, uh, bands, these layers, these energy rubber bands. And as you can see, they're all intertwined, and you can move them around because you can move the band around, which means you can go from one frequency to the next. And of course, they're very subtle frequencies, just as there are in music. And you just go up the scale or down the scale, or however, make it major, make it minor, and all the other variations. So anyway, that's just a little awareness of that. And when I was talking with Regina this morning, we talked last night, but we were both so tired that we realized we had more conversation this morning, thank goodness. And I heard this from Spirit. Um, when we have these stories or these experiences with Spirit, we're not sure what to do, or even if we are knowing what to do, the 3Ds, I think, is something we need to be aware of. The 3Ds are discovery, discernment, and direction. So in other words, if we discover that we've come into the energy field of a spirit or a ghost or something unknown to us that we can feel or sense, like your hair crawls up on the back of the neck, or you get chills or goosebumps all over, or you just have a really sudden knowing that your mother's there or your daughter's there or your whomever, that's the discovery. And then discernment. Do I want to mess with this energy? Is it something that I need to be connecting to? Or is it something that I need to walk away from and maybe ask somebody else to help me, or just send it away? Because you can send it away. And then of course the third D is direction, which of course, all right, I'm going to step into the energy, or the energy stepped into me. I'm going to find out what I need to do for this particular spirit and this particular soul, or what we think of as a ghost. And it came up, Regina will share her part of this, because we've watched, these paranormal shows, and they find these ghosts and stuff, but they just leave them there. And they don't do anything with them. And my first big frustration with that was when I was living in Santa Cruz area, well, a long time ago, way long time ago. My kids were really young. And they were doing this paranormal show in San Francisco with Sylvia Brown, for those of you who know Sylvia Brown. And they asked her to come in because she was the psychic at the time. And because the Toys R Us store there was haunted in San Francisco. And so my husband and I were watching the show, and yes, she could feel the spirit. And oh, it's a tortured soul, and all these things that happened to this tortured soul. And that was it. So you're going to help the soul over, you're going to help the spirit. Now, she may have when the camera was off, but it was never part of the show. And it irritated me a little bit. And so Regina and I both have, and she'll share her story. And that's just another part of, well, do something about it. It's like where you see somebody bleeding on the street. Oh, look, there's somebody bleeding on the street. Okay. Some people would say that about FEMA these days. Oh, FEMA comes in and says, oh, yeah, you had a hurricane and you're flooded. Okay. And then just, anyway. So that's the introduction to this. Regina, do you want to tell your why you got onto this for being this week's conversation? You're muted.
It's probably a good thing. I had to get up and slam the door shut. The wind or the ghost keeps pushing it. Ooh. Anyway, it is the month of Halloween in the United States, and it celebrates at Walmart as soon as whatever just went out the door. I think it was 4th of July. Then they start bringing in Halloween candy. But mostly, as I really wanted to share that I am, like Jeanne was just mentioning in the previous story, that there's so much paranormal on television, paranormal programs and hauntings and this and that, scratchy video, all those other things to make people really watch the drama or unfold, or what they perceive to be drama. And it really was frustrating me, just terribly so, because they weren't discussing at all what to do with these poor souls. Maybe they did rescue them? I have no idea. But again, it's so common. It happens everywhere. But it also happens to us. And the thing that got me is I was at a program recently, and there was a psychic not a psychic, a paranormal investigator there speaking aloud. And he was showing all his bells and whistles and his little tools and stuff like that. Great, really interesting, good program. He was talking about all the hauntings in this area that I live, because I live in a prairie, homesteaded in the 1800s. Anyway, he was talking about them, and so I went up to them and I said, so after you found the ghost, did you rescue it? And he looked at me with a huge question mark on his face, like, I don't know anything about that. And I said, well, can you feel him? And he said, oh yeah, I can feel him. And he gets his doodads out to start listening to him. And I said, but just feeling him, I mean, that's like stepping into a person's bathroom and saying, hey, I'm here. I'm going to feel my way around you, you know? The poor ghost is all shocky. What are you doing? So in the same thing, we need to find out what to do with them when you feel them. How do you feel them? And I understand this man being very naive, but I have a hard time with somebody making finances and all the rest off of the poor dead spirit. When maybe the spirit would like to be rescued. Maybe they'd like to be saved. I'll give you one of my very first ghost stories. And so we're going to start off simple here, one-on-one ghost stories. So just interaction with yourself. For myself, it was the poltergeist we grew up with in our household. My mother referred to it as the poltergeist whenever anything was missing. We could hear footsteps in the house. Oh, it's just the poltergeist. Poltergeist is just going up and down the stairs. We would be watching television. The poltergeist was just walking across the living room floor. You could hear him. You could see the couch depress when he sat there with us. I use the word he because, it was the generic he in our English language as opposed to she. It was just he. And for 21 years in my life, poltergeist lived at the house with us. He was a member. And I would see him, and eventually I actually could see that it was a male and physical male, very much aware. And I would see him from when I was out and about hiking, and he'd be always watching all of us kids. There were 8 of us. And then he'd return to the house with us, wherever we were. It was a wonderful, wonderful person, an invisible ghost. So I don't think anybody else saw it, but we all heard it in the household. And it wasn't until I had met Jeanne, and I'd only known her about 6 or 7 months when she was telling me about the rescue, about how to release them. So when I went back to the house, and my folks had moved out of there, and only my youngest sister was in this old 125-year-old house. And there was the poltergeist. He was so sad. You could just feel it wasn't a joyful energy anymore. He was just not wanting, but he was kind of moping around the house feeling. And my sister said, we've got to get rid of that guy. I don't know anything about him. It gives me the spooks because I'm all by myself. And so I talked to him, and I found out that he had died in the house, that he had died he was an old man. He'd caught in tuberculosis, and he died up in the little room that my father always used as his working studio. Not only did he die, but a little dog died, and we could hear the dog as well. A few months after that, I talked to him and I helped him over and got him over. And that was a wonderful experience. But I used Jeanne's methods and about discerning and then looking around and seeing if somebody else was there waiting for him. And if they weren't, could we call them forward and bring them in? So that's what I used, and I could feel him leave. And within just a very short period of time, maybe a week or 2 later, the entire front porch of this old ranch house just fell off. Boom. And the whole house started really feeling empty. And within no time, the house was collapsed. It was like the energy of the house and the family kept it up, of the ghost. And we found out later that from family members of this man who had stopped by the house, and they talked to my mom, and they said, yeah, it was their grandfather or their uncle or somebody that had died, and he had died of tuberculosis, and his dog did die. And he was just trapped there all that time. So that's
Um,
my story.
that is it's a great story because when I met Regina, we were young mothers, and she was a lot younger than me, and um, it was it was destiny. You know, we knew we had signed up to be together and do all this work, and it was amazing. And I was trained in rescue work from my spiritualist teacher, minister, and I'd only done a little bit of it. You know, I hadn't had opportunities to do a lot. If there was a child missing or whatever in the area, I was drawn by the help of my spirit guides to go help the child over or help the direction of the situation turn into a solution. And I had done a few of those things, but never had done the massive amount of rescue work that then just few years later happened with the Challenger crew and helping them over. And that's a whole nother story. But I would like to share, I have so many, and I'm sitting here thinking which one really, really is important. I mean, we started off small, Regina and I, with just, you know, a person here or a person there. And my daughter still brings me to areas where there's been a car accident or a suicide or an overdose, and says, "Mom, you got to go over here because so and so needs to be helped over," or "Mom, you got to go over here because so and so needs to be helped over." So it's something that I do. When I first started out, when I really hadn't had any training yet, um, there was um, kind of a really negative experience. I didn't really know what a medium was. I didn't know what a channel was. I was in my early 20s. I was more interested in God than I was in spirit because I hadn't really made that connection yet. And the only reason I share this is because sometimes I think our first experience may be negative. And I had a good friend at the time who was very interested in that and had her own experiences. She was kind of sharing with me her own dabbling in spirit stuff. And we were sitting around like on a Sunday afternoon with a couple of friends. And all of a sudden, I think we'd lit some candles. We weren't using Ouija boards or any of that stuff, but we were sitting around. And all of a sudden, I had this really heavy experience with this energy with me. And I was like, couldn't control it. And it started saying, this energy through me started saying really horrible things to my friend. I mean, threatening, dark, bad juju stuff. And I couldn't stop it. You know, I was like, well, I would never talk to anybody like that, especially that. But anyway, it was spooky. And my friend that was there that didn't believe in any of this stuff, afterwards, later on in the evening, she and I talked on the phone because she was really spooked. But prior to that, my friend knew how to help me out of that and get rid of that entity out of my energy field. And that was my really first experience with having any kind of entity that was very separate from my own mind and psychology come in and try to be this ruthless, dark being. So that's where I started. I had experiences with, you know, God and the music in me, all beautiful things in church, but I'd never had the distinguishing experience of something just random coming in. So she explained more to me and helped me out with that, and I was really grateful because it was nasty. The other thing I want to say, and then I'll go let this go, but one more recent experience was, and I've had so many, but this one experience, because it shows a difference between my fear back then to just like, oh, whatever. I had been traveling up north. I live in Southern California, and I was traveling up north to see somebody, and was using the Highway 99 for any of you that know California. That's the highway that goes in the center of the state. And it's a really nasty highway. It's pretty straight, but it just has bad juju all the way up and down. And there's accidents, and in the wintertime, there's this two-leaf fog that catches in there and traps everything. And accidents are just horrible up there. But it was the most direct way to where I was going at the time. So I went up, visited. Then we're coming home. My friend Roy and my friend Mark were with me. Mark's the one that did the healing mandala, the 9 hearts. And I think we're halfway, or at least a third of the way home. And all of a sudden, traffic starts to stop. And I thought, oh no, because it's all two-lane highway, two on left on northbound, two on southbound. We're going southbound. And I could, as we came closer very slowly, as we're crawling along, there's a huge, really beautiful RV, one of those big, big, massive ones. And you could tell it had rolled, and all the windows were out, and it didn't look good. And we could see as we got even closer that it had come from the northbound side and had rolled off through the median and then through our lanes and over there. And I was tired. It had been a long trip. And I just said, no, somebody else has to take care of this. I don't want to do it. And I could feel that. And I just said, bless you, bless you, bless you. Go to the light. And I just kind of, sent a little quick wash that way. I didn't want to take a shower. I just wanted to wash my face. Here it is. And so we get home about 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30 in the morning. I wake up. Somebody is standing over me and tapping me on my shoulder like this, very insistently. And I wasn't frightened, but I was a little more annoyed. And I said, you didn't just touch me, did you? Yes, I'm sorry, but I need to find my wife. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, man. And I knew who it was. It was the husband from the accident. So even though I wanted to avoid it, it was not to be. And I just reassured him, and I said, okay, I will help you find your wife, but I'm going to go back to sleep now. So you can sit out on the front lawn. You can sit out on the deck if you want to. You can even sit on the carpet, the couch if you want to, but I'm going back to sleep. And he goes, okay, I'm sorry. And I did the next day then, we sat down and we found his wife. They had both passed. And helped them both over to the light. But he wasn't going to go to the light because he wanted to take his wife with him, which is what makes it such a beautiful story. And then as he gathered her, we got her consciousness and her essence, then we were able to help them pass over. Now, recognizing that it's not just me that was helping him over, I have my spirit team on the other side that helped him once we started. It's a collaborative effort. So I just wanted to share that, and I'll be passing the torch back to Regina.
Dan, your story. Thank you, Jeannie. Dan, your story.
I have about 5 stories, and I'm just going to try to pick the briefest one here. Speaking of poltergeists, some years ago I was shooting a film for NBC television, and the producer and his wife and kids and myself and my girlfriend and the sound man and his girlfriend all rented a huge old mansion. This was in the town of Peru, Indiana. Don't ask. So we're all living in this huge mansion, and we'd come home after work in the evening, and various things would be out of place. So certain doors would be opened. Medicine cabinets were emptied into sinks, that sort of thing. And we soon found out that there was some lore about this old mansion, that it had, in fact, others had experienced the same thing. So and we weren't harmed or anything, but we noticed these things. Anyway, at the end of the project, everyone went home except my girlfriend and I. We stayed for another few days because I was refurbishing a camper van. We were going to go traveling. So we're hanging around there. And one day, this thunderstorm blew in. It was right out of a horror movie type thunderstorm. And so one of us had to go up to the room to get something. I went up there, and the bedclothes had been thrown against the opposite wall of this huge room and were lying in a heap on the floor. And that was when we decided we needed to get the hell out of there. So we did. That's the quick story. that one more maybe here. Um, I don't know if I've mentioned it, but back in the 1960s, I was involved with the writer John Keel, who was investigating the Mothman story in West Virginia. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it's a wonderful, huge paranormal saga. And among my other experiences there, I had traveled back and forth between New York, where I was living at the time, and West Virginia several times. Returned home at one point, and decided to write a silly song about the Mothman. So I wrote the song, sat down, put a reel of tape on my tape recorder, recorded the song on my guitar, finished it, took the tape off the recorder, put it on the table next to it. I went to bed. Next morning, the tape was gone. I looked for it under the table, not there. I turned my apartment upside down, gone. No one else had a key to my place. I figured, well, maybe when I move out of here, I'll find it someplace. Never found it.
It was the Mothman.
It might have been the Mothman. I actually, some friends in Boulder invited me to do a presentation about my Mothman experiences a few years ago. So I threw together a little video on the whole Mothman story and my part in it. And I'll put the link to this video in the chat if anyone wants to see it. One of the other paranormal.
And we'll hold that story. We'll hold those stories.
Okay.
Okay. We're just doing a couple of them short, and then
Okay.
I want Wendy to do a story, and then we'll take some questions addressing what we just went through, and then we'll go to the next set of stories. Wendy.
We were in a physical circle, and we talked to dead people every once a week. They would materialize and come and talk to us, and absolutely fascinating material. There'd been a terrible accident on Sydney Harbour, and late at night, and a boat had crashed, and there were several people who drowned. And this particular spirit that came through was a doctor who had been there, and the girl in the group was the police officer, and he came through to thank her. He said, "You tried to give me artificial respiration on the boat." And she said, "You've been feeling guilty ever since that you were never able to actually help me. But you helped me more than you knew because your energy was so strong. I was able to move through your energy field to the other side." And she had been feeling guilty that she'd never been able to save this man. But she realized then that she had saved him in another way. And there was such a beautiful energy in the room that we all were in tears. So
Thank you, Wendy. That is fabulous. And that is the difference between rescue work and just letting them be, or letting them wander, letting them be lost, or us filling with fear. Your mediumship circle, we're rescuing so many individuals, as well as those who were already passed, it sounds like, who came back to give appreciation. We really, as mediums, we all like to have that feeling. Our ego does appreciate an affirmation that something has positive happened. I think of so many firefighters every day, or police people every day, who have to go to calls, and they put a person in an ambulance and they never know what's going on. Did the person survive? Did they die? It's only when someone comes back to them to say, I appreciate all the work you did for me at the fire department, whatever. It is good for all of us who do rescue work or to interact with spirit, that we actually feel and accept their gratitude toward us, and us back at them for coming forward. Daniel, there's some questions that have come up, and before we take, we'll do 2 stories from the audience after we do some questions, Daniel, and then we'll go back to the next round of stories. Did that make sense?
Let's see.
I'm not reading any of the questions.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay.
From Gary, Question. Often I feel that the earthbound can't perceive those that come from higher frequencies, but they can perceive those of us from the earth plane when we are out of body. Do you feel this is the case?
I do for sure. I've felt that quite often. And also I've felt earthbound spirits. I've gone into a haunted house, and it wasn't considered a haunted house, although other people have said something's wrong with this house, where more than four entities were in the spirit in there, and none of them could see each other even.
Mhm.
They saw me, and none of them, they all needed rescuing. So I went to room, it was almost like a hotel where I rescued or worked with each individual, and each individual was from a different time zone too. So different male, female, animal. So it was very interesting, really interesting. And that's when I started really recognizing the fact that there's a lot of levels of spiritism and earthbound spirits who are truly stuck, truly stuck.
Well, if I might add to that, exactly, we've even discovered recently with people from when we worked with FMBR that and helping some situations move along, that spirits were over on the other side and didn't even see each other. Because again, it's frequency and wherever their frequency is. And, sometimes people don't want to move because they don't believe in anything else. So they stay and don't respond to any kind of help. I mean, I'm not going to tell the story right now unless we have time later on. But there was a suicide that Regina and I both were participating in, that we found out from her husband Jerry, who was a firefighter. And long story ago, it's not a long story, but a long time ago, about how help was sent, and this person still didn't see it. And it wasn't until his dog showed up, that he had lost, that he realized that he had died, because he still thought he was alive. That's the other part of it. Sometimes they just think they're alive. It's like Groundhog Day, over and over and over.
Mhm.
Next question.
Okay, this is from Sean Brickley. I think this is in response to your story, Regina. Question, was the man aware that he had died? If so, was he not aware that he could see or reach the light or call out for help? Was there no angel, guardian angel, that was watching him who may have been wanting to help him? Now, this may have been.
He was aware he was dead, but it wasn't until I had that discussion 21 years later. I mean, that I could ask him these questions, and he couldn't see further. He was waiting for his relations, his wife actually, but his wife had left, died and gone. She went on over, and here he is stuck, still looking for a particular thing. This is the thing, some entities will actually look or are waiting for a specific signal or sign or information, and it doesn't always look like what they want. And I don't know if he was any of religious thing or anything like that. I have no idea, but it's really fascinating. Those are questions that are very common. I ask them, can you see the light? But I'm working with my team, and if they can't see it, I ask my team to go over and get somebody whom they can recognize with, to take them or assist them. And I also will do a visual with a ghost or a spirit. I had a hunter who was waiting for his hunting buddies, and he'd been waiting there for over 100 years, I think, maybe 70 years. And long gone. But he did not know he was dead. He had no idea. And so for that, we had to actually, with thought and intention, actually create a space that he could enter and see himself getting into a vehicle or a transportation that takes him over, if it's a buck wagon or something like that. So there's things that we can do to help our team help them.
Okay, thanks, Regina. Next question from Ellen McCord. Are there energies that pass through a lineage in a family, attaching to various individuals until they are released and or helped to move on? Or is it up to the individual who gets attached to choose differently, to assist that ancestral spirit? I hope this makes sense.
Jean, you want to take that one?
Okay. I think it makes sense. I've read that question a couple of times. Let me just give it back to you, Ellen, to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So you're talking about energies that come through the family, but that maybe are passed from generation to generation, perhaps, or just person to person, um, looking to be helped over. So who's responsible is what I'm hearing you say. How do they get over if they're not moving?
Yeah, it's generation to generation, and the same behavior shows up generation after generation in a particular individual.
That just kind of, so what I'm almost feeling, it's almost like a haunting that's going around. So that's a little more complex because, and it does happen. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons people don't move forward or on, or they know that they're dead, but they just choose not to. Sometimes they can just be angry at people, and they are so stuck in a certain perception, on a certain belief system about how they were wronged or how things weren't right for them, and they just want to be angry about it. And so they go, they're trying to get somebody in the family to be aware, maybe to have a dialogue that they should have had when they were alive with whomever it was at the beginning, some kind of reconciliation. Maybe they are so guilt bound, they want to say, I'm so sorry. And they're looking for people that they can come to and say, I'm so sorry to. I mean, I've had experiences with that where, they just won't leave until they have some kind of resolution. And sometimes the people who are still physically here to say, oh, I don't want to talk to my mother, or I don't want to talk to so and so, I'm mad at that person. And I keep having to help them understand that forgiveness is for both of them to be able to be free of one another. And so if you have someone who really can hear that spirit that's attached and has come through, and they can connect and explain things to them, however they get over it doesn't really matter. It's blurry lines of responsibility there, and you also have what we call these separates, and that is an entity that doesn't really want to go through the channels of having to choose another family and start another body and grow the body and go through all the stages. So they attach to people. And, other people have called them different things, but this in the SRT fashion is called a separate. And they just don't want to do the work and can really, wreak havoc with a person that has one, like a piggyback spirit in some ways. There's just all sorts of descriptions, but there are things that come through generations, absolutely. Behaviors that need to be cleared. Hard to tell which came first, the chicken or the egg with some of that. And then, of course, there's lines of the scripts that are in family dialoguing and behaviors. I mean, there's all sorts of things. But whoever finds it, hooray for them, and then has the ability to have some kind of beautiful dialogue or the dialogue that reassures them they will be heard, but they need to go over now because they need to heal themselves. Because that's really the whole point of that is when they're stuck, when the record's stuck, there's no healing or potential for the healing. So it's really important for them to allow themselves to go off and learn. There's always helpers and counselors and teachers there and healers, to help them through whatever is bugging them and whatever is making them stay locked into a certain frequency that's earthbound. And sometimes they don't go willingly. I've had people come to me and these energies don't want to leave. So we remove them and we send them to a place, like you say, where they can get the counseling and the help. They could sit there for, a couple of decades, perhaps in our earth time, or centuries in our earth time. But they are then, but their removal is important so they can at least at some point in time make a decision. And some of them don't, and they end up sticking in the astral field. And that's another thing we haven't even touched on yet, is how full the astral field is. And it's not good because people are not able to go over and through and continue in their evolution to these various frequencies of light and energy. Does that help you? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Jean. Yeah, it sounds to me that what we're saying in general here is that all the psychological and emotional stuff that gets passed down in a convention, what we think of in a conventional way from generation to generation of family, induces all of these subtle vibrations and patterns. I mean, invokes certain patterns. And so, all the psychological work is all well and good, but sometimes it has to go a lot deeper than that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, next question from Violetta.
Actually, Dan, let's
Yeah.
do a story from one in the audience. There's one that says Eric's got a story, Eric, and then we'll go on to doing all of our stories again. Do another
Okay.
round.
Hi, I'm Eric. Back then, I'm talking 15 years ago, I was working in Brussels. I'm from Belgium. And that particular story started when I was in between jobs and I had a personal guide, which I tried to connect better and better, but I had a hard time to do that. And then suddenly he said to me, "You will be trained by angels or an angel." He said, "Okay, that's good." And I didn't think about that very much. I said, whatever. And then suddenly I got a consultancy job in Brussels, consultancy for Procter & Gamble over there. So, and when I entered, I was put in the aerial department. So, and that was my angel. And so I was in the soap department and I was coordinating for, because I'd done that before, and the plastic bottles. So, and they were going to make a new brand of aerial bottles. And I had to coordinate the testing. And the training went there is about, afterwards I taught Procter & Gamble at a very streamlined production and research department. No, it was crazy. It was improvisation day by day. And I was literally shaking going home. And I was panicking all day because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to do it. And I didn't understand even the questions my boss was asking me. So, and then over the 3 years, because he said, you will be there for exactly 3 years. And I was exactly there 3 years. And the basic training was to keep in contact with that angel, what to do every single moment when I was there on the job. And it took me 3 or 4 years, 3 or 4 months before I was calming down, because I could be confident of myself, but most of all, that I had to listen minute by minute through that angel. He said, phone this, do that, calm down, go out, take a block, calm down. And for instance, stupid things, I was panicking and I was just trying to calm down and walking around the block. When I was back in my office, there was a post-it with the answer of my problem I was shaking about. And after I saw, and then I'll stop the story here because there are lots of examples by then. But most of all, after 6 months, I got the nickname Cowboy because I solved all impossible questions, requests, and they said, "Oh, we don't know. Ask Eric. He will figure it out." And it was an amazing but very stressful 3 years of training. That's it. Thank you.
Wow.
Wow, thank you, Eric. You know, being a medium or being a psychic or having these extra insights, I know it was stressful for you in your training, but it's a stressful job. It can be a stressful job when you are working with the unseen, the earthbound, those spirits who are stuck in the astral field here. Not all are angels. I mean, if they're an angel, they've already passed over. They've moved over and they've come back to assist. But it's the earthbound that can cause a little bit of discomfort for us because their energy is so trapped. And we as sensitives, all of us, our energy is very expanded. So when we enter and we feel this trapped energy, it's like, a dirty dust bunny or something. I don't know. It's just, it just rubs you raw. But even children feel this, and too often we ignore our children's response. My daughter was, I think she was 6 or 7 months. Yeah, it was getting towards winter, and we were heading, my husband and I and two girls were heading to the mountains for some R&R in snow weather. We got to our place, and it was a big enough house that we could put the girls in their own rooms. And as soon as I walked into one room, my daughter, the youngest, the infant, just started screaming, bloody murder. I'd take her out, she'd stop. I'd take her back in, she'd scream. And my older one, who was already, she was probably 3 then, and she was running around and she said, Mom, scary, 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 scary. She didn't know what it was, but she said, but there's something scary going on. And in her room, she was frightened also. So, and then as I took my baby into that room, she started screaming. So I put them both in the master room, which was quiet, and I didn't feel the energy, and they stayed there fine. And that's where I put them to bed that night. And my husband and I, as we were sitting there in this rental, we were watching television, and at that point, a face came across the lampshade. And my husband said, look at the shadow on the lampshade. And I thought it was my shadow, a profile of mine from the other lamp. But he turned it off and it was still there. And so then I turned the light off, and I said, there's something going on in this house. When we said that, all of the ceiling tiles went up and bang down. And I said, is there someone here? And the ceiling tiles went up and bang down again. I'm going, oh my gosh. And my husband got on the line and immediately talked to the person who had the house. And they said, oh, we've been having people saying some strange things are happening and we can't get it rented. And they said, do you need to leave? And I told Jerry, I said, we're not leaving. It's taken me years to get a little vacation. So we stayed. And then we had turned the television off, and there the television turned back on, but it turned on with just the white noise behind it, and a face showed up in the white noise of the television. And Jerry said, "Okay, that's a man." And the one I saw on the lamp, he said that was a woman's profile. So he says, "Looks like we've got 2 here." So I told him to go out of the house because we needed our rest. We were tired, and I just didn't want to deal with them. I just told him to leave. Now that isn't the way to handle it. I know, but I was young and dumb and didn't have a clue. So young, dumb, and not a clue, 2 babies. I wanted rest. Anybody who's a mom understands that. So I didn't give it much priority. And I didn't know about astral fields. I just knew it was dead. They were dead. Well, it was a 4-hour drive back to home, and my girls cried the whole way home. My older one said there was somebody sitting on her, and she was upset by it. And the baby was sitting there just wrestling and crying all the way home in her car seat. And I was so livid at how rude these ghosts were. Then I said, all right. I told my husband when we got home, I says, we got to look up at the news somehow. We got to figure out the news and find out what happened to these couple. And we did. We found the news. We found the story. And they had been a couple that had gone over the hill in a car accident. And they had wandered their way and just basically moored themselves to that little house because it was comfortable. Whether it was a place they had used before, I have no idea. So I got them over. I let them know they were dead. They did not know they were dead. Couldn't understand why nobody was paying attention to them. They had been haunting the house for over a year, and they were so frustrated that they were utilizing now all sorts of physical means to get the attention of the person, but of anybody in there. But they didn't really quite get that they were dead. So there's my second story, and here we go.
Thanks, Regina. Well, that's really interesting that this couple would have found the house. They had not died in the house. They simply found it and attached themselves to it. I hadn't heard that sort of ghost story before. Shall we hear another story? Nikki has a story. Nikki, are you there?
Hi, I'm here. You may not see me, but you'll hear me. Okay?
Okay, we can see you there.
Okay. I know I don't know what's wrong with my video, but it comes and goes. Anyway,
It looks
story.
appropriately ghostly. Actually, it's wonderful.
Halloween. First, I do want to say that I grew up in a haunted house with poltergeists as well. All my life, I've been communicating with them, and I've learned how to do it. This is a walkway in front of my house here that you see. But you see, we live in the woods, and my daughter grew up here, and she used to play with the elementals in the woods all the time, and she had great fun with them. Now, elementals or nature spirits are not bad, like Hollywood likes to make them out to be. They're not bad, they're not good, they just are. And what they don't like is when we go in and cut down their trees without asking permission. That kind of pisses them off. So I just wanted to throw that out. Okay. So my story is I live 2 miles from the VA hospital. My daughter works in the VA hospital. One day she brought home a ghost. He was very confused. He didn't know he was dead. Thank God I grew up where I knew how to communicate. And he was banging, and he had my canary, and he was pushing it up against the bars and doing all kinds of stuff to let us know that he was there. And he didn't know, he thought he was alive. He didn't know how he got into our house. I just sat there and I talked to him and I explained to him, and they can hear us, that he's dead, because he didn't know that. And I said that, and another thing I believe in is you just don't tell people to go into the light. You don't do that. That doesn't really work so well, in my opinion. What you have to do is tell them they have to ask permission, get permission for their guardian angel to come to them, because everyone has guardian angel, but sometimes they seem to need permission to interfere with your life. So you have to give them permission, say, talk to them, say, please come and help me and show me where to go. Show me what I'm supposed to do next. And that seems to work. And so that's what I did. I told the ghost spirit, the VA guy, he needs to give permission and find his guardian angel, and the guardian angel will lead him to where he's supposed to go. And after talking to him for a while, all of a sudden the banging stopped. The canary was left alone, and looked very shocked, I might add. And he disappeared and he never came back. So in my personal opinion, you kind of put Hollywood behind you, because it's all fake. You really have to find out for yourself by hit and miss what works and what doesn't work. And I still deal with ghosts and things now and then. I used to go into cemeteries and talk to the spirits who were hanging around and try to release them and tell them what they need to do in order to find their way out of there. And that's my story.
Hey, Nikki. Jeannie?
Did you get all of that?
I have a friend that lives next door to one of the biggest cemeteries, Rose Hills in California. Well, not only that, it has power lines all around it. It is really a vast bunch of acreage. I don't remember the amount. And my friend, and she's into all this stuff. She's been one of my clients and attended lots of my workshops and such. And periodically, we have to go in and just clean them all out of her house. And she has a lot of protection around, but the sheer size the mass of energy that is around that cemetery makes it a lot to manage. And she totally understands what's going on, and she has her team from the other side. But what's a hoot with her? Every once in a while, she'll send me a picture because she gets all these orbs that come into her house, and the phone picks it up. And she'll go, "Well, we had a wild night last night," and then she showed me this picture, and they're like 10 or 12 orbs, just really brilliant everywhere. But the orbs are usually uh, the more conscious energies that come around. But it's just a given that they're going to be wandering. Uh, they wander for various reasons, and even though we know that there are spirits ready or angels there for these people, if they don't believe it, if they've never really had any attachment to it, it doesn't matter. What you see is what you believe, and you have to have somewhere in your psyche that understanding. It doesn't have to be in the forefront. It doesn't have to be the most obvious thing. And that's why suicides often don't receive help over, is because it's there, but they can't see it. They don't believe it, or they hate themselves, or they figure they need to go to hell because they've been such a bad person. So it's all about consciousness. It's all about perception. And I've had people say to me when I've done rescue work with suicides, particularly, "Well, why don't they just go to the light?" And it's like, well, if they have no conscious understanding that there is light there because they don't believe in it, it simply doesn't exist for them. So we have to think of clever ways to find the right language for each of these people to help them over. And and especially people, all walks of life, for all various different reasons. Everybody has stories and beliefs and consciousness, not only from this lifetime, but from others. People forget, they don't remember that they've lived before, and so you're going to have just this huge kaleidoscopic collective of different perceptions of life. And the thing is, we're clothed so differently at times, whether we're in the body, whether in another energy frequency that has a different shining color to it, or a brilliant light here, or a soft palette there. There's all sorts of levels of creation. So sometimes we have to sift through to find the main line for that person or those persons, to find out what will help them. I mean, like, I haven't heard that ghost story from Regina. Of all the stories I know, that's one I hadn't heard. I had a similar experience up in the mountains at Lake Arrowhead, but I was not schooled yet. And that freaked me out because I had to keep all the lights on because I didn't know how to get them to leave. I mean, I asked them to, but there's an authority and a knowing that comes when you work with rescues, that when you've done it enough, you have such a knowing and a strength that spirits will allow you, for the most part, to guide them, because they can feel your own self understanding and security. They can feel that you know what you're doing. And I didn't always have that feeling that I knew what I was doing. But when you've done it enough, there's that deep knowing. So when you say to them, so-and-so's coming to get you, and you just see them over there they are. They feel that knowing inside of your voice, and they trust you because that's the connection of energy, versus just get out of here because I'm scared or you're bothering me. I mean, with that poor gentleman that tapped me on the shoulder, it was just that I was overwhelmed by things in my life at the time, and it wasn't that I wanted to not pay attention. It's just I didn't really have any bandwidth in my head at the time. But Spirit said, no, you got to do this anyway. So it was easy enough to do. But yeah, yes.
Okay,
Dan,
thanks, Judy. Mary Beth, you have a story? You're on.
Yeah, it's a kind of a story, but it's a comment too about what Jeannie and Regina are saying. I've done a lot of rescue work, and a lot of it is because I've, learned from Jeannie and Regina things. I don't have the sight that they do, but I definitely have a feeling, and I can know when there's something in my presence. And it's interesting. It's not so bad anymore, but used to be whenever I would go out, even to the grocery store or something, and it's like I'd bring someone home with me. Or my husband used to go bowling, and every week he'd come home from the bowling alley and he'd bring a spirit with him for me to take care of. and so I got pretty good at doing it. But then there was times when the people were, I couldn't, have the sense of how to help them. And I remember this one time when Jeannie was, helping me, and she said that it was because this person was, and I think this will answer some questions that people have had. This person had, kind of like dementia, and they were really so, when they passed, they were not mentally all there. And so they couldn't even, I mean, if I tried to communicate with them and tell them that I was going to bring someone in, it's like they couldn't even handle that stuff. So you have to have a special kind of a team or spirit to come in that knows how to work with people that are in that position. And I remember Jeannie saying at that time, the spirit was giving her the information. It's like, this is going to be a real issue in the future because so many people are living to be an elderly age and having a lot of dementia. And so a lot of the spirits kind of walking around earthbound are just confused and not knowing where to go. And so I thought maybe Jean or Regina could say something else to that. And the other thing I wanted to say was that when I think it was 96 or something, and I had a younger brother who was quite a bit younger than I did, and he passed real suddenly. And it was kind of a traumatic thing. It wasn't expected. He was like 38 or something. But he became kind of a guide for me all this time. And I'm actually have been much closer to him since he's been on the other side than I ever was when he was physically here. But so he kind of, one of the jobs he did more on the other side was to help people that died in like tragic accidents and, sudden traumatic deaths, because that's when sometimes people are really confused and not knowing they're dead and things like that. So he was the kind of person that when I was having a problem with someone I felt like was in my presence, I would call him and he could come and help me with that. So those are just some of the comments that I wanted to make about my experiences. Of course, there's a lot more, but I'll give somebody else a chance to talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Beth.
Wow. Thanks, Mary Beth. Ellen, you noted that you have a story to tell.
Sean, wait a minute, Dan.
Okay.
Hold on, Ellen. Sorry about that. We have a question up above from Sean Brickley. Can you read that, Dan?
Scrolling down here.
Lola?
Yes. Sean Brickley, to everyone. Question: it all sounds as if it's person-to-person work, notwithstanding whether it's an incarnate or discarnate person. Incarnate or discarnate person interfacing so as to move the process towards the light. Where do high-level angels or God per se fit into the equation?
Very good. I think Jean's ready for that one.
Yeah, because I saw the question earlier. Great question. Great question.
Very good question. Yeah.
Um,
Hopefully Sean's still on.
well, there's always that God presence. There's always that angelic presence. It's just a matter of how we're tuned in. And so it might be that we seem to do it at like the earth level of the incarnate person. Let's say if I was to help somebody who had died in an accident and maybe was still wandering around because, that their essence just jumps out of their body and they've had no time to leave it gently. That was one of the things that George Harrison of the Beatles was so mad about when John died, because for George, it was all about how you prepared to leave your body. And John never had a chance to do that. And so George was very concerned about that it was so sudden that John didn't have preparation to leave. But John later said to a bunch of us, when I saw the guy shooting at me, he said, I didn't wait around to see what happened. He said, I just left. And he had enough consciousness in himself to know that he didn't have to hang around. He knew what the end result was going to be. And he did leave his body. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to visualize or see that angelic presence with us or with that person who's just passed to grab them over or whatever. That presence of God energy works through all sorts of people and works in all sorts of ways with whether they're a friend or a family member, or a figure that the person might know that, I must be dead because look, so and so is here for me. That recognition, but that energy, that divine energy, whether it's shaped as a Godhead or it's shaped as the angelic presence, is always there, and many times people from the other side are clued in and touching in with that presence when they go to recover the person who's just passed suddenly or tragically. I don't know how well that expresses that to you, but there's so much more clarity. Anybody that's going to rescue somebody has to have a certain level of consciousness to be able to do so. And they don't have big gurus, they don't have big prophets. They just have to have a certain level of consciousness because, to do rescue work, even if it's not big gory stuff, it takes a certain skill. And many times spirits come through and say, like Jerry, Mary Beth's brother, I want to rescue people. So he went to rescue school, and Robin Williams is talking about having gone to rescue school so that he would know how to do the rescues that he's been involved with very strongly. If you read Matthew Perry's writing on Cosmic Voices, Perry talks extensively how Robin came to him, and Robin talks about, I went to rescue school so I could be there for you. So they're already in a different level and a different range of energy, which is much more filled with love, much more filled with compassion and the creativity to be able to help a lost soul. It's already in the equation. We lose that when we're in the physical body because of the way and the nature of our environment and the division of light and dark. Certainly on the other side, there can be that too, but the people that come in to help another person over have gone into some kind of training and experience and guidance, and they will have people watching them, like teachers watching them, their guidance counselor watching them, and they're already in that level of love and compassion and understanding. So it's a given, if you will. It isn't always a given with the person because the person could be having many psychological problems, and so they can't honestly understand that it would be available to them. But the guidance people coming in, the rescuers, know that, and they carry that energy with them, and they just wrap their arms around these people. And you have the right combination, you find the right fit, and then they move them over. And there's various ways of doing that. I hope that makes some sense to you, Sean. Good question.
We have Dan, if you could read Violetta's question. She's posted it twice at the beginning, and then also to welcome Gordon Finn here to the program. I hope that you will also participate here. And so we'll do Violetta's, and then I'd love to hear from Gordon.
Okay, Violetta's question. Are all the malevolent spirits I'll try to translate this a bit.
You want to hear this yourself?
Have all malevolent spirits been in a human body but couldn't cross over after a traumatic death? Does this mean every spirit that incarnates on Earth has a risk of becoming earthbound? It's a bit worrisome.
Oh, very good question. I would say yes. I would say yes, we do. And our whole process, the reason why we're here is to learn to be a higher level to evolve as a spirit, to evolve our person. And some of us, just because of choices we make and deals we do, choose not to be spiritual, choose not to elevate our consciousness. And that's kind of really a simple format. I think we all have an opportunity to be stuck and pray that we have enough individuals on the other side that have enough concern for our well-being that will continually guide us and direct us while we are here on Earth to make choices that are for our own benefit as far as our spiritual benefit, not for the monetary or material benefit, but for our spiritual level of increasing our education, our spiritual awareness.
It's about development.
Mhm.
And when I spoke earlier to the astral field, people go, "Oh, I want to astral travel." And I go, "Why?" Our words have to change because the astral is becoming just overloaded. It's also an EBW, an energy bandwidth, and it's become so overloaded with souls and essences of energies that have either become very separated from themselves, or they don't want to go over, or they just are stuck in consciousness. And we all know people in the human world who are stuck with their belief systems. I mean, really detrimental to themselves. And they can't get out of it. Those beliefs go right with them. If you read Paramahansa Yogananda, he says the way you leave here is the way you arrive on the other side. It isn't necessarily that when you come to the pearly gates, as a metaphor, that you have instant enlightenment, which we have been told, oh, everything's beautiful and wonderful. For some, it is because they have worked with themselves. They understand. They have this beautiful understanding of the continuation of life and all the sacred energies. So they go over into that space. But then you have others who have resisted it, who have hated it, don't want to hear it. They have felt betrayed by it for some reason. And so they go over with that consciousness. And that is why people get stuck. They get stuck there just as they get stuck here. And sometimes a loving person who knows them, who wants to rescue, is trained, can't quite get there. So they watch them until they're ready. Just like you watch another person in this lifetime who maybe has an addiction and finally says, all right, I need help. Same kind of thing. That's been my experience all over the place with others like that.
Thanks, Jeannie. There, I'm looking, scrolling back in the chat, and there's a question by Giles Tompkin, who asked, reality does not permit interference, for better or worse. I'm not quite sure about the question, Joss. Could you clarify that?
Yes, it's my understanding that there's no way that advanced spirits can move less advanced spirits forward. They can guide them and they can make suggestions, just as bad intentioned spirits cannot move people backwards. They can make unpleasant suggestions, but it's up to the individual to follow it. This is my understanding of it. Please clarify if you want to. I mean, what I'm suggesting is that angels just don't come in and wave a magic wand and, oh, you're better now, because you've been a murderer or you've been a bad person, and you have to make atonement. You can't just jump forward. I thought.
No skipping classes, no skipping grades. We have, and both Jeanne and I have worked with many spirits who have gone over and come right back and said, I'm not ready. I don't want to work this hard. I don't want to work this hard. I want to stay with mom. I just want to hang out in the house. I just want to be with my wife. And we say, no, you've got lessons to learn. You may have gone over, but it's like they're playing hooky in a way, and they come back because it's tough over here, over here. It is tough here, it's tough there, especially if you resist change, resist understanding, resist evolution, resist your own empowerment of who you are as a spirit being. When we resist, we cause problems. We hold ourselves back. So guardian angels, rescuers, all sorts of people, individuals, spirit beings, and earth people, we're all giving a person a hand up the rung of the ladder. But you can slap my hand if you want. You can go on your own.
It's all about choice.
It's all about choice is exactly it. So I agree with you, Giles, on that. We all have choices. And some more willing will say, you know what, screw this, I'm going over. I'm not even going to bother with looking for something. I'm going over because I know light is at there. I know my family members are there. Others have had the experience where their husbands or spouse keep coming to bed with them long after they're dead. Are they over or are they not over? That they keep returning. It just depends on the individual. It depends on that spirit. So rescuing is a real individual, but it can be done as a huge group as well. There's battlefield releases where you release loads of individuals. After COVID, COVID was a battlefield globally. The number of death and dying or exiting was global. And it is right now with the wars that are going on, the hundreds of thousands of people that are dying on a daily basis. It's a terrible thing. They're not all in the astral field. A good majority of them are being rescued. How many, I don't know. But they are, Jeanne and I were, and Mary Beth, we were informed that they were ready for them. They're waiting for them. They knew this was coming and they're waiting for them. They're there to rescue. And it's a profound witness. If we get to witness something like this, it's profound to have them come back and share what that experience of being rescued by many is like. And Jeanne, at the end of this, will share with from one of the individuals who was rescued from the 9/11 and went over with the many that went over. And they were rescued by many. And that is a pretty profound experience.
Well, I'm sorry.
We'll have you share that at the very end, Jeannie. So,
but I wanted to say about was it Lahaina, the fire that happened in Hawaii? I saw before the extent of the fire was known. I checked it right away. I have friends that live over there. And I saw this wall of spirit. It was like 100 feet tall, right at the base of the ocean and the front street, their main street there with all the touristing stuff. And it was huge. Spirits, ancestors, relatives, angels, if you will. It was absolutely stunning. And they were all there waiting to help all those people over that were going to lose their lives in that fire. And one of my friends, her husband, had a dream. He woke up from a nightmare that he was in a car with kids that he had to rescue, and found out there was a family with kids, just like he described in his dream, who had died in the fire trying to get away. And Ty had gone to rescue them in his dream. There were just all sorts of spirits in the body and out of the body that there were help. They already knew what they were going to need to do because they can see past what we can see, both ends.
Wow. Jeannie, also, while we're in this discussion, very, very briefly, I have a thing about semantics in this whole spiritual arena. And I know you and I have had little tussles about the definition of astral. Because in my experience, people use that word fairly flexibly. Some use it to mean everything outside the physical. Some distinguish higher astral from lower astral. And I think it'd be a good idea if you expressed your understanding and how you use that term.
Well, I have to blame Seth. We know that I've been working with the Seth energy for many, many years. In fact, that is the one class I'm going to be doing in January, a 6-session series of Seth, helping us to work with the new generation and how to help them come forward. It's going to be an incredible series. I just was not able to condense the long class that I had. It's the long story, but anyway, this is what I've been led to do first. And in that, Seth has been teaching us, so there's a series that we did a couple of years ago, and he outlined his glossary of terms, if you will. And it's a little bit different than what I have been using in the past. And it may not be comfortable for everybody because we all have our own experiences and our own training. But I got to see how his way of thinking was reasonable and something I could adapt to. And so that kind of shaped the understanding of the astral world, because I work with a model called the 9-world model. And that's too much to describe today. But it was given to me by Spirit to understand the different parts that we have chosen to bring into this lifetime to grow from. And one of them actually includes the astral world. And so I think right now it's like a big garbage pail of ideas and leftover, things. I think that it's just a word that is outgrown its use. I mean, it's a catch-all. And I don't know that we can create a new one. It just has to be in consensus. But for astral, for me, is that the band that's the closest, the energy band that's closest to the earth, that does hold those energies or entities that are trapped, are angry, or maybe dark, and so they're not, and some of them can get. You almost have to be rescued out of the astral world, if you will. I think when we understand how we travel through energy bands and intersections and corridors, a little more sophisticated description of how we leave our bodies at night and where we go, versus just astral traveling. Hopefully for the next 50 to 100 years, we're going to be able to develop a better language that we can all agree on that fits what we are able to remember that we've done before and are doing now. So for me, that's what it is.
Yeah, and that's just in English.
Right.
Those of us who are not multilingual really have no idea how all of these concepts are handled in other languages.
Well, I know the Hopi language, there are beautiful spiritual phrases and words in the Hopi language that we have no words for in the English language.
Right.
So,
So language, I guess, can take us only so far. I was going to ask, and we're an hour and a half into our session today, and I just want to make sure before we close, and I'm addressing you and Regina here. If there were a pill we could take to make sure we really crossed over when we're done here, what would it be called? I'm a little tongue in cheek there. In other words, what is perhaps the single most important thing we can focus on?
That
Regina.
we never die. Sorry.
Got it.
Point taken. That's great. Regina.
And we never die, of course. That's a point taken, and that's why we're all here. But to love. Do to others with love. Forgive. Be compassionate. That's more than one word. That's 3. Compassionate. Follow with wisdom, kindness, love, understanding, tolerance, respect. Those are, basic words of a good thing. Somebody asked earlier, I've just looking through the chats real quick. Do we have to worry about animals not getting stuck in the astral field? No, we don't. Because animals, insects, all of those things are in the moment. They exist within the moment. We, on the other hand, exist within time frames, past, present, and future, always thinking about this or worrying about that. But an animal lives and exists in the moment. As soon as it's gone to sleep, been put down, been shot, killed, even if an animal I live out here where they hunt. If the animal has been wounded, serious, it goes immediately, the body goes into shock, and it is gone before the body is down. I'm dead serious. It can be still suffering, but the entity, the spirit is gone. and then there are times when you witness a lengthy injury on an animal, and having to respond to it emotionally and physically, because I'm thinking of that I'm going through that, but the spirit of the animal has already disappeared. It's gone. It's gone.
Goes back to a soul group.
They come back to visit us all the time for sure. But they don't carry the baggage we have as humans. What baggage?
Mhm.
And AMPA, AMPAMY, Amy, had a question earlier. Dan, if you want to read that one. The very
Scrolling up
bottom
to
right
the
now.
very bottom right now. Hold on. Yes. I have a story about a spirit that was in my home all my life growing up. The house was scheduled for demolition. I went back and tried to rescue him. It went very badly. Is it possible 30 years later to find out what happened to him? Is there anything I can do for him now?
Yeah. Who asked? I read that question myself. Who is it that asked that? I'm sorry.
This is AMYPA. Amipa? Amy PA. Okay.
She's still here? Amy?
Well,
Yes, she's
unmuted.
just
Can you
she's
hear
just
me?
unmuted.
There
There
she
we
is.
are. We
Oh,
can hear
okay,
you.
good.
Hi,
that's a
can
really
you hear
good
me?
question. Really good question. That spirit definitely wanted to dominate that area. Didn't want anybody messing with them, and they probably gave you a good run for your money.
You did. It was very, I've been so interested to talk to you, Jeannie. This spirit was in my house my whole life. I named him John. Growing up, since I remember, John has been with me. And then my parents, I was over 20 years old. We grew up as a very old, 150-year-old farmhouse. They sold it to a developer. We were all out of the house, but the house was still sitting there. I was only about 21 years old at the time. And even then, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was overwhelmed. I had to go back for John. You can hear it in my voice. I've been sitting here crying this whole time. So I got someone that I knew that believed this had been a very, I wouldn't say benevolent, but just there. He was just with me all my life. I walked into the house. We just went there and there was nothing stopping us, but we hadn't been in the house for, 6 months. And it felt very bizarre to be in my family home with it empty and feeling, but it was a horrible feeling. I was not afraid. I felt like it's awful feeling here because this is my home and it's empty and kind of falling apart, like it's just scheduled for demolition. They're going to put a retirement. They bought it from my parents for over $1 million. And so I go running up the stairs. It's this steep corridor stair. I'm going to get John. I'm just going to go up. I don't know what I'm doing. And my friend is saying, well, wait, we do this. And I'm saying, no, just get John. And I don't know if this was John. I went up these stairs and this very different feeling came. And it wasn't nothing. This didn't feel like John. I don't know what was going on. This was a very non-benevolent feeling. And I told Becca, go back down. I thought it was Becca. I thought it was that I had brought Becca. I said, Becca, go back down, get out of here. I assumed in my little 20-year-old mind that knows nothing, this ghost is scared. And now I've brought someone else and I'm yelling, Becca, get out of here. You get out of here. And I figured I can get him. He's upset. Why? I don't know anything what I'm talking about or doing or knowing, but oh boy, this is a scary situation. This is a stairway that goes up, has a landing, and then it turns sharply to the right. And then now you're at the top. Becca goes running back down. This was a worse feeling. I go down the stairs. Now she's gone. I've kind of run down those stairs too. I'm at the bottom and portable vacuum. Do you remember those vacuums that we used to have? I'm 55 years old. They were small and square and white, and they just had a hose on them, and they weighed about 15 pounds, little portable vacuum. That thing flew around the corner and smashed above my head. I mean, smashed. It was, I got out, got into the kitchen, ran out, stood there crying. I still to this day don't know if that was John or what happened. And that was the end of it. We left, and I've literally carried it my whole life, not knowing what happened and wondering what to do.
Well, I've been really looking at this, and I could be wrong because there's a lot of energy in your field about it and your concerns. Clear you off so I can really see clearly. But my initial response is John is gone, but he was very angry that your parents sold the property, and it was going to be, the house was going to be torn down, and there was going to be stuff developed on it. This energy was happy when you were there, kind of kept you as his little, no, I don't want this to sound wrong, but he was very energetically affectionate towards having your conscious attention. He wasn't dark, but he was like, had a certain perception about what he wanted to be on that land and how he wanted to stay there. And I think he'd been on that land for, I don't know, a couple 100 years. And
my understanding.
And the house was his home. That was his heaven. That's the other thing about perception. To him, that was his heaven. And you and your family, not you particularly, but the family made it his hell. And he had no place to go. And he had not developed himself like Regina was talking about, and the evolutionary process of growth and understanding that we are creators ourselves and can create through our evolution and our understanding and teachings, etc. And so he was like he unleashed the wrath of, Saint Helena on you.
That's what it felt like. And it's really, that's what it felt like. I kept saying, oh, he's mad, you go. And I wasn't really fully afraid for my own safety, but oh man, he was mad.
He was
very
raging.
Mad.
He was raging.
Yes, it was
he wasn't mad at you particularly. He wasn't going to injure you.
No.
But he just exploded because what he had lived on and all that he could remember, he knew. It was like that was this whole universe. And all of a sudden that universe was going to disappear, and he was just raging mad. And he was going to have to grow. There were people there for him to help him. You guys had brought it in. But he eventually moved because he couldn't stand what was happening to the land. Who knows where he is now. But you need to just bless and release that, as Regina said. It's about compassion. It's about the Ho'oponopono. I love you. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Thank you. But if forgiving ourselves for being in positions that maybe have been uncomfortable or just, discouraging or whatever. Release, compassion, forgiveness, everything. And just bless him, bless him, bless him. You did the best you could. You cared for him. It's not your fault. It's not your responsibility. He had issues. And you did what you thought you could do for him that was good. You really were caring about him. You need to let that one go.
Bring him with me to my new house. I thought, can he just come? We don't know at that age.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Oh, I said I was trying to bring him with me to where we now live. No, he didn't want to come.
No.
Oh, I've got to come in here. Is it Amy?
Yeah.
Okay, Amy, your guides would not allow him to come with you. He did not belong with you. He needed to go over, and he was breaking rules. First of all, you were too young. Your guides are there protecting you. They're taking care of you. And as long as you were in this situation, things were okay. But when you went back to rescue him, to take him with you, he was getting his way. That's like a narcissist. A narcissist will stay a narcissist until they figure it out. He was going to get his way. Your guardians really protected you. They stepped
I
in
kind of see
between.
how
to the
you're
team.
saying that.
Pardon?
It can kind of resonate with you saying that it kind of
And
felt
that's-
that way.
Yeah, and so that's important for you to recognize. We may not see all of our guardians and our angels who are there with us, but they have control of certain things that we don't have control of. I mean, we don't have control of lots, and they do have a way of asserting themselves in places where they need to protect us, because that's part of our agreement. We didn't come here by ourselves. We came here with a team, and some of the team is on the other side and some of the team is on this side, and we work together through all the things that we're supposed to learn. You were supposed to learn this experience, and you've got it. Be grateful for the experience, be grateful for the knowledge of it, but certainly release the carrying of the trauma and the feeling of disappointment that you were not successful. By no means, that was not it. It was about learning about boundaries, and you learned your boundaries. That spirit had to learn his boundaries, among the other things that were going on in that house. It needed to come down, and that spirit needed to go somewhere. So you're on the good end of this thing right now. You're on the very good end of it. And you need to move on and release those 30 years of your life that you've carried this sense of failure, because there was no failure in this. No failure at all.
Very
Absolutely.
much.
Absolutely. Dan,
Yeah. Yes.
I'm going to break protocol a little bit, but I'm looking at this question from Hyacinth about, with so many young children being killed in the Middle East, did they choose to be born at this time to have only a brief life here? Which is an excellent question. Can we answer that?
Please.
Excellent question.
So I know Regina and I both will be sharing with that. Along the lines of talking about consciousness, and we go where we believed we were going to go. And when we talk about heaven and hell, which we know isn't really, well, this door you open it up, you go to heaven. This door you open up, you go to hell. There's all sorts of doors and passageways and places to be, along with Giles talking about, spirit is cram packed, but don't we have an infinite number of space? Well, yeah, but certain areas, frequencies, let's put it that way, certain frequencies are really crammed with certain consciousness and belief system. With that, it's kind of loosely tied into this. One of the reasons this planet exists, in terms of what I've been shown, is we are a light and dark planet. We have a planet next to us. This is my Trinity, which goes into a whole great thing about what Seth's going to talk about sacred geometry and the new children coming in. But we have this sacred geometry here. We have the first planet, metaphorically, it's all darkness. We have the metaphor of our Earth planet, which is light and dark. And then we have the metaphor of the first Earth, which is only light. And we kind of go through stages of those different three. This is what I've been shown right now, is Charles Fillmore, the created unity, might say. I might change my story tomorrow. But this is where I am with this now. We have hell on Earth. So if there are spirits who feel they don't deserve anything, they come into places like the Middle East, all the places, whether it's in the Sudan or in Africa or even here, they go into places that are hell-like or hellish, either because they're stuck, or they're stuck, or they're stuck, or they're stuck. They just can't get out of the sense of being punished because maybe in another lifetime they killed people themselves. So that attraction of energy just carries across. Oh, I got to know what it's like to suffer, so I'm going to go in there and be killed real fast. And it makes it seem so cruel. But again, it's all about consciousness and awareness and belief systems and evolution. That's what Seth talks about all the time. It's all about evolving. We're not here to save anybody. We're here to evolve. In the process, we might very much help a lot of people. But our primary incentive to being on this particular planet is to evolve from complete darkness to the light. And in those stages, maybe an oversimplification, but Sometimes there's so much activity out there, you got to take it in steps and packages. As brutal as that is, and by no means am I saying that that is going to just happen and we should be happy about it. Absolutely not. But whether it was with slaves, whether it was our Civil War, whether it was Hiroshima, whatever it happens to be, there's a consciousness that keeps him in a certain place. However, this is also a free will planet, which means we may come in thinking the agenda is going to go from A to B to C to D very well, but the people in our team or people around us who are supposed to meet us at certain points in our choices, and they decide not to or don't show up, or the consensus of the group changes, then it changes everything we thought we were going to experience when we came in. Well, that's a whole bunch of other stuff that we found out. So in other words, these children may have come in thinking they were going to have a better experience than they did. But the other people in charge from the more the larger collective, the leaders, etc., supposedly, had other ideas and other agendas. And perhaps the collective consciousness, like with Netanyahu and all that, couldn't change that predatory energy. And so it went down that path of the predator and the evil and that control and power. That's what this planet is about. Us as a collective deciding what we want as a world community. Do we want war or do we want peace? Do we want to learn how to be friends and family and get along? Or are we going to just be, very limited dimensionally, or however we want to explain that, and just, have no consciousness to the understanding and the wisdom, the beauty of the universe. And so these pockets of energy bring that. And sometimes people, whether they're children or young adults or whatever, go into really horrid situations because they want that experience as part of their evolution. So there's a lot of reasons why these things happen. And it's painful. But when we realize that we never really die, that we're always just changing shape, then we can kind of understand on a larger level why all this stuff goes on. Oh, this person over here wants to learn this. This person wants to learn that. The series of books by Michael Newton, Lives Between Lives, is great. Really one of the better ones, I feel, about explaining how we make our choices about when we want to come in and what we want to do and what we want to learn and what we want to grow from. At least this is where I am with this. And there might be other people who totally disagree with me, and that's A-okay. But from what I've heard and learned, this is where I am right now with that. Sorry, I took so long. Regina?
Oh, wow.
Jeannie,
Thank you, Jeannie.
Can I just come in for 1 second, because we're at the top of our second hour, and I just want to flag that Gordon next week is going to be extending exactly what you've been talking about. What he says in his talk, he says, spirit contacts and retrievals show us solace and renewed love, but exploring our other lives leads us to understand our complete selves beyond this current incarnation and into the interdimensionality that higher self lives in all the time. So he's going to be talking about next week, he's going to be talking about past lives, future lives, higher self. Gordon, can you tell us what you're going to be talking about next week, and perhaps how it relates to your work? We all know that you're doing fabulous work with spirit rescues, retrievals, and teaching others to do that. So just a couple of minutes, unmute yourself and tell us what's going to be happening.
I joined in late because I got the time start wrong. Sorry about that. But I've been listening for the last, 45 minutes or whatever. And it's all been very interesting. And I wasn't sure how I could contribute because most stuff was getting covered. The one or two things I would point out is that a higher spiritual being can lead a lower spiritual being to move up levels. Somebody quoted something saying that can happen, but it's quite easy to do. You can persuade somebody that is living in a sort of a purgatory existence to move on up by describing what the paradise level is like. You can tune into what their desires are, and you can give them little tips and hints about what they can do, see, and experience on the higher level, and you can get them to go quite well. What was the other thing I was going to say? There are many, as I agree with what's been said, there are gazillions of earthbound spirits floating around, and too afraid to go on, too ignorant to go on, too focused on earth-like desires to go on, too attached to former families and lovers to go on. There are indeed all those people and all those types. And we just have to sort of work with it, all of us. And I've certainly found in doing the Zoom class in the last few weeks with David that not only can experienced retrievers like myself do this work, but people that join the class for the first time, they can do it. And it's convinced me something I felt all along, that this is something we can all do, and we don't have to be asleep and project. You can do it from a sitting, waking position. Now, maybe that's more recent with the vibrational increase we've been experiencing in the last 50 years. That could well be, but we can certainly do that. So to drift right on to next week, I do intend to sort of extend our spiritualist consciousness, where we are aware of spirits all over the place that we can contact or help move on into the past life, future life thing, the scenario that is revealed by past life regressions and between life regressions, so that we can come to some understanding of where our higher self lives all the time. Our higher self that is not stuck in time and place, but is sort of like the webmaster or the chef that's cooking the meal with all these different incarnations, with different attributes and different challenges. And I hope it will be enlightening and inspiring.
Well, this is. Thank you, Gordon. It was great. And I just wanted to make another comment with you, and it was regarding what I had said about helping another person up the ladder. How spirits can help each other out. They can help. It's like guiding. You can guide the horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Make him drink. Yeah.
And that's the same with spirits. It's the same with man. It's the same with animals. Everything. You can't make them. You can't make them on the other side, but you can definitely call your guides in and say, hey, this guy needs a hand, or this gal needs a hand. Because in the end, we as individuals are not the ones doing the job. We are allowing the source, we're allowing God, we're allowing spirit to work with us to assist. We can't do this alone. And life's pretty good. So Jeannie, would you like to roll it all up with the
yes, and because then people have to leave, they can certainly leave. I would call your attention to, again, cosmicvoices.network for the full story of fire captain Frank Callahan. And it's a long story that he wrote through me 5 years after 9/11. And he was working with one of my guides that I known in the physical, who was a beautiful, beautiful soul. And so I'm just going to read a little bit about his experience, because it's way too long to read aloud right now. And hopefully you'll have a chance to go in to cosmicvoices.network and get the full story, because I had to really edit it down. So this is what Frank said to me. One of the first things that brought us together when we died was the incredible roar of thousands of angels singing. We almost forgot who we were and where we had come from, because the roar of the angels' music completely surrounded us. We had been drawn collectively into this huge hall and were promptly held by thousands of lighted beings. We could never have imagined anything so beautiful. When I came to, so to speak, and realized what was happening, I asked a kindly gentleman sitting next to me who all these beings were, and how was it that the music was so beautiful. He responded in a way I will never forget. He took my hands and said, as he looked into my eyes, "Son, this is the result of the world praying for you." He took my hand again and told me to look down and over ahead of where we were standing. There was this beautiful, magnificent eagle flying all around us. It had several foreign-looking fellows in its talons. At first, I didn't recognize them, but I started to shake as I recognized that these foreign fellows must be the hijackers of the planes that ran into the towers. I was appalled and angry. All of a sudden, the beautiful angelic voices stopped, and we found ourselves in a horrible place. Then the kindest of men looked at me again in the eye and charged me with this question: which do you choose? What do you mean, which do I choose? I have a choice? Yes, thankfully you do. I began to cry uncontrollably as I recognized what this all meant. I could not move into the place of heaven while carrying discontent, anguish, hatred, and despair. The angels sang to us as a result of all those people around the world praying for us. These prayers were so beautiful, so forgiving, that nothing could keep us from the joy of God. And he was faced with the choice of forgiving the whole situation and the foreign people, and he had his men with him. Do I forgive them, or do I lose myself in despair? I have, it's one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. And it's really unto it. What do we choose? What's our choice? Do we forgive and move into the world of love and light? Or do we continue to live in darkness because we're so angry and can't forgive the situation? But the story it's much fuller than that. So I hope that you guys can go into that space. But it says it all about what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
How do we go over? What can we do for ourselves? It's all about a choice. What do we serve? Who do we serve? Love or fear? So bless you all for being patient and letting us have such a wonderful discussion. It was fantastic. I think we could have lots more discussions like this. And I just thank you all for letting us be a part of your day.